So I'm here with sexual assault survivor and author Tara Reade. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. Your book,
Sure.
Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In, is about the aftermath of coming forward. Can you discuss some of the backlash you faced for coming forward and speaking about now President-elect Joe Biden?
Yeah, I experienced quite a bit, as you may be aware, just through the media, just looking at the headlines, and the stark contrast between how Dr. Ford was handled and how I was handled. And by the way, I support all survivors. So that isn't to criticize that. I'm just saying the way the media portrayed her allegations in comparison to me was very different. And if you Google my name, you can see some of the really horrible things that and attacks on my character and my reputation right after I came forward about Joe Biden and many untruths. So it's been really hard, and it's one of the reasons why I think that people have a hard time coming forward about powerful people because they weaponize their resources against them, and that happened to me.
I'm sorry that that happened to you, and there is a lot of hypocrisy in the media. And you bring up, Christine Blasey Ford, and there's a lot of different ways like you were treated in the media. And I think your story was a lot more credible because like your mother had made the call to CNN with Larry King. CNN actually removed though that video, I'm saying, from their official site. Why do you feel like you were treated so differently by the media?
Well, we're kind of in a duopoly system right now. It's Republican, Democrat, and the Democrats have really been hypocritical about the Me Too movement. They've used it as a mantle, and it's been a wolf in sheep's clothing because I don't think they care about women's issues. Joe Biden's a Democrat, and because he's a Democrat, I think that's why I was so attacked. And there's also, this other dynamic that was happening during the election where they were weaponizing fear of Trump. And you combine those two, and it was a very powerful thing. The Democrats really need to step up and own what they've done to the Me Too movement in regards to my case, I believe, because the hypocrisy was astounding.
Most definitely. Rose McGowan, she wrote the foreword for your book. She's been a
Mhm.
person who's taken up for you, unlike a number of women on the left. You can make the argument out of political convenience who chose to back Joe Biden, such as Vice President Kamala Harris, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, Stacey Abrams, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and Hillary Clinton. What are your thoughts about, Democratic women rallying behind Joe Biden and some of these women outright dismissing your sexual assault allegation?
It was devastating because these are people I admired, and I had been a lifetime Democrat, and I'm no longer a Democrat. I did my Dem exit, and now I'm an independent. And I tend to be progressive in my thoughts, but I was stunned at the way they didn't reach out to me and ask me for my side of the story as a staffer. I mean, I worked for the U.S. Senate. I worked as an intern for Congressman Leon Panetta. I've worked in congressional races. I mean, I was involved with the Democratic parties, but not one of them reached out, even though I reached out to them. Because before I went public, I reached out to Kamala Harris, who was my representative. I reached out to many of them, and not any of them contacted me back. They simply rallied behind and circled the wagons around Joe Biden.
Wow. And, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And, there are a lot of rumors and mistruths. I want to clear some of those up. So I know you're a horse person and your horse is on the front cover of your book.
Wearing a horse scarf, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Lynn Hummer, the founder, president of Pregnant Mare Rescue, has accused you of stealing from her nonprofit organization and has spoke of you bragging about working for Biden. What is your response to her accusations?
I never stole from her nonprofit. In fact, I gave money to her nonprofit and donated time and adopted a horse. And she's, I don't know what her, affiliations are or why she did what she did. I do know she was promoting a book, and I know that there were some people in that community that said, oh, because they saw me on national news and kind of used the platform in a negative way because there was sort of this pile-on negatively. It makes me really sad. I did file a cease and desist against her. She has since calmed down. I've also filed a criminal stalking because she was getting to the point where she was stalking, and it was a bit bizarre. They even talked about trying to kidnap my horse, whom I've had, I've had him for almost, it'll be going on 7 years, 6 years. I've had him since he was 1. So it's just ridiculous. And it was things like that that came up that have nothing to do with 1993. They have nothing to do with what Joe Biden did to me, the sexual harassment and sexual assault. But I think that the campaign, using private investigators, using campaign surrogates, using those troll farms, were very good at trying to switch and bait, and try to change the conversation. But let's go down that ugly path of I stole money or whatever. They said, does that still mean I should have been sexually assaulted?
No, not at all. And like,
So,
it just seems like a character assassination attempt. And
mhm.
there's other stuff out there too. Like, I've heard like, that you're a Russian agent, which
Yet,
seems like,
yet.
yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Also it was one of these things about like Antioch University, about like, I mean, questioning your degree. Like, can you spread like, some light onto like, what the truth is?
Sure. Let me start with the Russian agent thing. That started in 2019 when I came forward regarding the sexual harassment. As you know, 7 other women have accused Joe Biden of sexual harassment. I was the 8th. And I came forward after Lucy Flores was just ripped apart by the media. And it was really stunning to see. Actually, all of them were treated pretty badly. They were called, some of them said they were trying to seek attention and narcissistic. I mean, all kinds of names in the media. And then I came forward about, after seeing what happened to Lucy Flores, I came forward and said, look, I filed a sexual harassment claim against Joe Biden back in 1993. I had this problem. I was forced to resign after they found out I filed this. So anyway, that came forward within hours of that story being online on the AP. Edward Isaac DeVere from the Atlantic floated the whole theory I was a Russian agent or Soviet plant. And that just gained momentum and gained momentum. And now, it's gotten to the point of just ridiculousness. So yeah, but no, I'm not a Russian agent. And then as far as my education, I went to law school. You can't get into law school without your BA. I've never lied about my education, but all of that I think will bubble to the surface. The truth has a way of coming forward, and so it'll come forward.
Right. And, I do know that you graduated from law school, but there's a number of like media outlets and stuff that question like your undergraduate BA. And I was wondering like, why like that is. And, but
I survived a domestic violence case, and I had a sealed name and sealed social security change. So during that, when I was in school, all of that was happening. So some of the records are not all present. And what we're doing now is we're in negotiations actually with Antioch, and it's going in a positive direction. So again, the truth will come to light very soon.
The University of Delaware is refusing to make Joe Biden's Senate documents public. Like you mentioned, the complaint you filed, a lot of people believe that is where it is, that they have the files that related to your accusation that Biden sexually assaulted you when you worked in his office. Do you feel the university is being complicit in a sexual assault cover-up?
I feel like the Democratic Party is complicit in a sexual assault and sexual harassment cover-up. They go after people from other parties, and sexual assault and sexual harassment is nonpartisan. As far as University of Delaware, I wrote them and asked them for my personnel records. Now, this is the complicated part, because people are going to fire back at you saying that Joe Biden said they're with the Senate. They're not with the Senate. What happens when a member of Congress leaves, and Joe Biden knows this, by the way, they give it up to the chief of staff, who is Ted Kaufman, who was the person who forced me to resign, who also knew about the sexual harassment. I did not tell him about the sexual assault, but he did know about the harassment and my complaint. Ted Kaufman was in charge of archiving these personnel records. However, they chose to do so. They chose to archive their records with the University of Delaware. That's where those records are. As far as my records, I don't know. I requested them. They denied them, saying that under the Freedom of Information Act, which is FOIA, they call it for short, members of Congress are not part of that. They don't have to comply with that. So I have been unable to get my personnel record. I don't know if that paperwork is still there. I hope it is and not destroyed. I do know there was an article done where they saw members of Joe Biden's campaign going into the University of Delaware right around the time my complaint came out. But I don't know what that was about.
Biden will take office on January 20th, becoming the 46th president of the United States. He's denied the allegations that he has assaulted you. When he becomes president, what is the next step for you?
Well, it's really painful. Other survivors though are going through this, and they have gone through this with Donald Trump or other people that have been powerful people that have been accused. They've had to face their accuser, not facing any, justice, but rather almost being more empowered. So what I want to do is make sure that other survivors have a voice and can come forward. What happened to me can't be seen as a successful way to silence and sideline a survivor. If we allow this, we're going to allow rape culture. We need to have a real conversation to end institutionalized rape culture. And so I want to be an advocate and a voice and not be silenced just because he's so powerful. It's really counterintuitive to say on one hand, oh yes, you have a safe platform to tell your story, and that's what Joe Biden was saying. And then behind the scenes, doing the character assassination, making sure his supporters were attacking me online. It was very it was very dualistic. It was very ugly. And this needs to be brought to light. It needs, this is why women don't want to come forward. If you shouldn't lose your reputation, your housing, your money, your work, because you came forward about someone powerful.
In hindsight, like what would you have done differently about bringing your complaint to light, like when it was occurring?
Well, I wish I would have listened to my mother in 1993 when she said to make a police report. But even then, I don't know, like, what would have been the police reaction? Would there still be a copy of the report? You know what I mean? It was 1993 when people it wasn't the same kind of conversation. I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have a lot of money. And it seems like the people that are successful of getting their voice heard are usually in a different class. And they really use the fact that I'm working class and weaponize that against me and really try to class shame me, by posting my divorce papers, posting my bankruptcy, posting that I was poor. And like, they kind of attacked me for it, which is really odd because it was supposed to be from the party that's supposed to be for the working class. But I think what it really showed is the actual disdain that Democrats have for the working class. And I'm really a poster child for that disdain that they have.
In your book, you write about the trauma that you experienced with men, including your father and husband, the father of your daughter. In addition to your experience with Joe Biden, have you had to heal the strain of trauma from men?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of the question. Try to heal the what?
How have you had to heal the strain of trauma from men?
Well, you brought up the horses earlier, and all my life I've been really connected to animals. And one thing that I found in my life that helped me was horses, or equine therapy, they call it. And that's really good. Talk therapy helped, but also sports and being focused on the future and, setting those goals for yourself. I mean, one of the things too that I learned in talk therapy was to follow an emotion all the way through, to not deny it and not ignore it, just follow it all the way through. So if you feel angry that day, it's okay to feel a little angry, like follow it and then let it go and then channel it to something more positive. So, the trauma that I experienced, I brought forward. I wanted people to know that sometimes there's not isolated events in people's lives. There's things that happen. And I think the violence that my father exposed me to normalized it. So maybe my boundaries weren't as strong. So when Joe Biden did what he did to me, maybe I would have had a different reaction, or maybe he wouldn't have approached me at all. I would have had a different demeanor. But I feel like, and I'm not victim blaming, I'm not saying I could have done something different. What I'm trying to say is that I think when you suffer multiple traumas, it definitely, violence becomes normalized and it becomes more difficult to set strong boundaries.
What have you had to teach your daughter about abusive men?
Well, just that, being honest, when she turned 18, I told her about the thing with Joe Biden. And my mom had already also talked with her, and she knew, she had overheard some conversations too, I guess. But she really has a strong outlook on life, and has studied and has had therapy herself. And so, I'm really proud of her. She's a wonderful woman. She's in her mid-20s now, and she's just gotten into grad school, and she's amazing. And she has a very healthy relationship. I think what really I was concerned about is her getting into a pattern of getting in unhealthy relationships, or, I didn't want her to fall into another pattern that would be negative. And she hasn't. She's been really good. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing to see her grow into such a wonderful woman.
I wanted to get your thoughts because we've all seen these videos online of like Joe Biden as far as like his inappropriate touching, and when you see that, like, and then people like, kind of like dismissing the claims, because I feel like that gives a lot of validity to like what you're saying, as far as like, you talk about like how he was doing like touching your neck, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about like, some of the things like, you've seen online as far as like him doing inappropriate, like sniffing little girls' hair or.
Well, I don't, I only can speak to my experience, and my experience was that he would put his hands on me in such a way that minimized me, made me feel like I was more of an object than a person. And, he would put his hands underneath my hair, rub my neck, things like that. But it was like I was there for his pleasure. It wasn't, I don't know how to describe that. It was, I wasn't like an autonomous human being. When I've seen those videos, I've seen his lack of boundaries. He just sort of takes over the space. And I think a lot of that is power and control and entitlement. He just feels entitled to put his hands wherever he thinks he can. And, my mother said to me, because the last time I saw Joe Biden was after the assault, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He'd come up from behind me at a meeting with his hand on his shoulder, and his thumb was rubbing my neck from behind. And I remember I froze up, and I was so scared. I remember I almost started shaking, and I told my mom about it later, and she said, "Oh, Tara, that's about power. That's what that is." Because I didn't understand, like, and I was younger and didn't, but my mom was like, hell no, you need to make a sexual, harassment report. And she wanted me to, of course, report the assault. And we got into a huge thing that night, and she even cried, and it was a very emotional call. Yeah. So.
Tara, what's next for you?
What's on next for me? Well, I finished the book. I want to probably do more writing. I want to be really active with now talking about the bigger picture, which is forging a path for other survivors to come forward without, what's happened to me. So I really want to work in advocacy in that capacity, and helping people heal. Just a bigger meta discussion about that.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you.
Oh, it was really nice meeting you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Of course.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.